Hello and welcome back to the PlantFueled Femme. Today we have Lindsey with us. Lindsey is a menopause energy specialist, a nutritionist, and a certified health coach, specializing in women's health and hormones. So thank you so much for joining us today, Lindsey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have actually a couple questions just based, on your introduction. But menopause energy expert, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent most my life in the area of energy because suffered, and I can talk about my history later, but I suffered chronic fatigue syndrome for many years. And working with women in my calling in the menopause space, I have really found that women aren't able to live out their goals and accountability to their goals if they can't gain more energy. So it's one of the big areas when women start perimenopause and even premenopause where their energy levels go down. And so I consider myself a menopause energy expert because I know a lot about this subject personally and how it affects our production and the things that we want to do, and how having low energy can bring shame and guilt. And we set these goals and we have these things we want to do. We're laying in bed at night, maybe awake, and the next day we're gung-ho, but we're so exhausted we can't make anything happen. So really focusing on how to regain energy, vitality, and joy is my specialty. So women can, have better night sleeps and lose weight and eat the foods they want to do, exercise how they want, all those things.
Okay, that is wonderful. Thank you. I wasn't sure if it was like, actual physical mental energy or if we were diving into like the whole metaphysical energy. But this makes so much sense, and you're 1000% right, because as we go through these hormone changes, yeah, your energy pretty much goes in the toilet, and there is so much that is tied into that.
Yeah.
So you yourself struggled with that, it sounds like. Can I ask you how you did get into this space? It sounds like the energy plays a little bit of a part in that.
Yeah, I mean, I suffered chronic illness for some 20 years of my life with multiple autoimmune conditions, multiple tick-borne illnesses, chronic digestive issues. I had major hormone imbalance since I was very young, and endometriosis, migraines, and all of that was really chronic fatigue syndrome played a huge role in that. So I spent a lot of my early life thinking nutrition is what's going to help cure this for me. I'm going to get the nutrition right. So, of course, went and got a degree in nutrition and dietetics, and I focused a lot in the physical realm. But it wasn't actually until I discovered nervous system regulation and the role the brain plays in health that I was able to recover my health. And it was an amazing transformation for me by doing brain work in combination with that physical aspect of nutrition and movement. And then when I was finally starting to really feel healthy again, really for the first time in my life, because I'd been sick since I was a child, I went into perimenopause in my mid 30s. So early onset, it can often be called, which I don't know if that term is accurate now or not because women are starting peri so much earlier. I mean, even 37, 40 and that. But I had thought I was having, oh my gosh, am I having a reoccurrence of autoimmune conditions or tick, because tick-borne illnesses can really wreak havoc on your body. And so I sought help through a lot of different providers, integrative doctors and naturopaths, and some of the avenues I had taken before functional medicine, which is a big part of my background. But I wasn't getting the help I needed because no one believed I was in perimenopause. And at that time, I didn't like, I remember asking one, I think I'm in peri. And, one of the doctors said to me, well, stranger things could happen, and, or you're no more closer than anyone else. And I was like, what is, so when I finally came to the realization I am in perimenopause, then I was able to take my background in nutrition and really I worked with people in chronic diseases and illness in nutrition counseling. But through the knowledge I had, I was able to apply it to my menopause experience. And then because I have a background in research, I went into like research mode, like, okay, how am I going to do this? So not just the foods, but the mental emotional system regulation. And then for me, the area that really helped connect all the dots was spiritual connection. So really grounding down in my deeper purpose in life and faith and connection in my community to anchor in why is it important for me to start to feel better, to have more energy? Because in perimenopause, women feel flat. They have no spark. That joy is often gone from their life. So really finding that root of and asking those bigger questions helped me and has helped a lot of women I work with. So that's kind of a very condensed version of my story, but it's kind of the basis of why I'm being called to work in this space.
Right, right. No, I think that's true of so many people that are in this specific spaces. We have, this kind of outstanding experience, but we feel like we're not the only ones having this experience. I mean, if you're a woman, you are going to have this experience at some point in your life. And I think, because of our age group too, perimenopause was never talked about. Like we weren't told beyond, hey, you're going to have hot flashes, what all this encompassed, and how it really does touch like truly every aspect of your life.
Yeah, it's so true. I think women are becoming more aware because of the talk in this space. But
Yes.
for us who've gone through it, it's like it was never really talked about outside of having, okay, maybe you have a hot flash,
Right.
or in the context of like, oh, it's going to be amazing once I don't have my period. I can't wait for that day. Like, oh, it's just one day and then you're to the other side and you're period free and it feels great. And it's like, no, that's not at all. And now I'm not saying every woman goes through intense perimenopause, but we're seeing more and more, I think, because of our toxic environment and the way we
Yes.
manage stress and social, that more and more women are having really intense experiences during perimenopause and they don't know what's going on. They think they're going
Right.
crazy. What's going on with me, you know?
Yes, yes, I know. And then it's like the Western medical field hasn't really caught up with that. And we're very often, well, like when I went in, similar to your case, there was a lot of symptoms going on, and I was given a prescription for Prozac. What was that going to fix? I never even filled it because I knew that wasn't what was wrong.
Yeah, that happens to so many women I talk to. It's kind of like, oh, well, you have a couple choices. We can put you on an antidepressant or
Mhm.
HRT or birth control. And those are kind of the options. And I think it a little bit is offensive to women that so many providers go right to an antidepressant. It's like, well, maybe
Yes,
I'm depressed because something greater is going on with me. That's kind of,
right.
let's talk about that. And I think also too thinking about that less than 5% of women are on HRT
Yes,
for hormones and 60% of women statistically don't want to go on HRT. So we've got this huge gap between like, oh, you can either do that or do nothing. You have to suffer with it. And that is not true. There's so much we can do to help women in this transition.
yes, yes, absolutely. There's supplements, there's a lot of nutrition, and then like you touched on too, that stress management piece. Like really, that's such a huge piece inside of this transition.
Definitely. It's really, I think it's a greater piece than is been given the attention it deserves because
Yes.
we're so action oriented in our physical bodies and what can we do? Like, oh, I'm gonna nail down my diet and then I'm gonna be awesome. And it's like, actually, there's a bigger thing happening within our system.
Right. That's so true. And with HRT, like, it is given a lot. Well, it's given somewhat, probably not, it's probably not offered as much as it should be. That's like birth control is offered, which is a band-aid and doesn't help. But if if your nutrition hasn't been proper and if you are battling, a whole bunch of internal toxins, there's a good chance that the HRT isn't going to have as positive as an impact as it could.
Yeah, I really like that you bring that up because a lot of women that I see will come in after they've gotten on HRT and say, I really don't feel that much better, or I feel worse.
Yes.
And it's just what you're saying is because when we think about how a plant grows, you need to have really good soil to get that plant to grow. It needs to be right place, right sun, all these things. And when we throw HRT on top of someone who maybe hasn't had the best diet, or they're super busy with their family, they don't make time for self-care, it's not going to kind of get you as far as you want. I think it's a great tool, particularly with the mental health piece of perimenopause, some depression, anxiety, panic attacks, some of that darker side that isn't often talked about. It can be supportive to give more balance, but it's not going to get us really feeling amazing until we target some of those other aspects. Yeah.
Right, right, exactly. Because like, you're just because you are still supplementing the hormone doesn't necessarily that it's going to be like magic and turn on and work the way that your hormones did. Like you have to process this in a different way. And if your body is still, if you have a whole bunch of toxins built up, your liver cannot function properly to use the HRT properly. And then I see a lot like women, they will quit the HRT because it makes them feel worse. And that's generally leading back to that root cause.
Totally. And you bring up such a good point that it really is detoxification. So when you
Yes.
bring a hormone on, there's metabolic factors that are happening there. So your liver needs to be functioning at a high level to remove excess toxic estrogen. And when you don't remove it, emotions can become worse. It can be like PMS times 10, really bad breast swelling, even puffiness, that puffy feeling that women get. And so doctors aren't really looking at when we're adding something, what's the detox pathway and why is that important? Especially for estrogen dominant women. This isn't well talked about. So some
No.
women with PCOS or endometriosis who maybe they already have high estrogen and their progesterone's very low and they're both fluctuating but not in conjunction with each other, and then you throw more estrogen on top of it and it's like holy cow, breakouts and migraines, and it's just so much emotion is there. And so women will say this isn't working for me, and so they totally stop it, which then can kind of throw them in a different direction. So thinking about detox pathways either through food or supplement or exercise or all of those things can be a really important topic in that isn't talked about from the medical field. Yeah.
Right. And you brought up such a huge piece of it too, is the estrogen dominance. There are so
Yeah.
many doctors that will not take that into consideration, and that is not talked about very often. But
No.
even just because you're in perimenopause doesn't automatically mean that you need estrogen. You may not. You may
Yeah.
only need progesterone, or you may need testosterone, or you may need progesterone and testosterone. But and that I think, with what I see working with women and research, I think that goes back to, we live is such a stressful life, and progesterone is going to be stolen for cortisol production, which will leave
Totally.
us estrogen dominant, even in menopause. So even if estrogen is low, it doesn't, maybe you don't need to supplement, maybe you just need progesterone.
Yeah, totally. That's amazing that you spoke so articulately about that because so many people don't know that. Yes,
No.
everything's coming down, but it doesn't mean that your estrogen isn't still high. And so much stress is stealing our progesterone, and it's really hard to replace it naturally. So sometimes women do just need to go on progesterone, or they need to balance out their life. So if you don't want to go on progesterone or you can't, then looking at those other aspects and how I work in the three pillars of health is the physical nutrition, the food and movement, emotional system regulation, which we've talked a lot about, but a lot of neuroplasticity or neurobiology there, and how we're managing stress, and that spiritual resilience. How are we anchoring that down so we can be not just in stress management mode, but we can be resilient to stress? So we're
Yes.
bringing a lot of balance to the brain and body, and then our hormones can start functioning how they're supposed to. Like our body kind of knows what to do if we give it all the stuff it needs. Figuring that out can be a bit difficult, but it's
Oh gosh.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Figuring out what is the missing piece here can be challenging.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, you brought up a huge piece in that we do need to be resilient, but you also brought up something else. I'm going to come back to the resilience here in a moment. Yes, some women are afraid of HRT. So if we want to increase progesterone, which is, even without having labs, I think that's an okay place to start. I've never had anyone come in with, excess progesterone. Um, but I think that they can be somewhat intimidated by HRT, or maybe, like you said, they cannot take it. So, what are nutrition wise? What are some ways that we could bring up progesterone?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty difficult to do strictly through nutrition just because of the way progesterone is made in the body. But I would say that bringing balanced nutrition and removing foods that cause excess stress in the body can be a first step. So we're going to stop the process of stealing progesterone for the adrenaline and cortisol pathways. So that would be a one first step.
Mhm.
There are some herbal supplements, and there's, the body of research for women, of course, is not where it needs to be, particularly in the space of menopause. And women's research has only really been predominant in the last 30 years. Most research is done in men because they don't have hormone fluctuation, so they can get a good baseline. So scientists are like, oh no, we're going to treat women like small men. So we don't have a ton, but there are certain herbal supplements. I usually won't say off the cuff exactly what they are because it's better to work with someone to really see which ones are going to be the best for you. So herbal supplementation can be one,
Mhm.
stress management, balancing out that diet so your body isn't stealing as much progesterone. And the other thing about balancing out stress in through food and emotional system regulation is that it can help our body stop producing so much excess estrogen that we can't process through our liver. So, it's bringing balance to that system. And I think that's going to be the most important, as opposed to saying, oh, there's a particular food. And there are particular foods like flax seeds and tahini or sesame seeds, sweet potatoes, cruciferous vegetables. Those are going to be all things that help our detox pathway and can help support progesterone production, estrogen production, and that system. But to particularly say there's one food, unfortunately, there's not.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's so true. And I think sometimes there is confusion, of what food do I eat to bring my hormones up, when really there is not a food that can bring your hormone production up. It can support, like you said, the nutrients necessary to make hormones, or it can support the nutrients necessary for detoxification, which aids hormone balance overall. But
Yeah.
we don't have magic foods. That's why we have to go to the doctor and get prescriptions for these hormones.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think all women have to. It's definitely a personal choice, and bioidentical hormones have made it more available. But yeah, I think bringing balance is the most important because even if we go on HRT, we're not going to stop this process. So we really need to go from that mindset of something's wrong with me and
Mhm.
reframe that into my body's asking for something different. How do I give it that so then we can meet out our health goals and the things that we want and really just start to feel better. And then having HRT, like you said before, as a tool, right? It's not a
Right.
it's not a total fix, but it is a tool. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's not it's not a magic pill. There's not a magic pill for anything. Like,
Yes.
everything
Hallelujah. Yeah.
takes work. It takes change, and it takes you really like learning to listen to your body and observing and honoring the feedback that it's giving you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I think we're really missing is we're
Mhm.
so disconnected from our bodies and
Mhm.
what the messages our body is telling us. We don't listen to it. And then all of a sudden we're in this state where we're super depleted. We feel terrible. Maybe we're building resentment for the things we have to do because we're so tired. And it kind of becomes this downward spiral of guilt and shame and frustration. And so, how can we kind of stop that spiral and reframe some of the things we're going on? Listen to our body. I think that's the bummer part of seeing the use of Ozempic and some of the prescriptions is it's an even further disconnection of ourself with our body and what's going on. And in perimenopause, we really do have to tune in to what's being asked. Why is this? Why am I so emotional? Or why am I so tired? What is my body really asking for in this moment? And I don't think we take time to do that.
No, I know that we don't take time to do that. And I think, like you said, we're so disconnected that even if people are like observing, like, hey, I'm crying all the time or I have no energy, they don't tie it back to, well, maybe because I beat the crap out of my body for the last 30 years, you know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Or, maybe you have really low blood sugar and, that coffee and pastry you had for breakfast didn't support your energy through the day. So then at 3 o'clock, you're crashing. And then it's like, wow, or raging, which I dealt with some rage or like that nail on a chalkboard feeling when I started like, oh man, this is like PMS, like times 10. What can I do here to tone this down a little bit?
Yeah, the irritation sometimes.
Yeah.
But no, it's all feedback from your body trying to tell you something for sure. If we would just slow down and learn to listen.
Yeah.
Um, but you also made a really good point about, with cortisol stealing progesterone. Um, and we do need to fix that. That does need to be addressed. But you made a really good point in that we need our body to be resilient. So what is like maybe a simple practice that someone could do that would help to build back that resilience? Because a lot of the times right now is pretty low.
Yeah, I think it is really low. And, it can look different for each woman, but, some of the things that we can do is start to create a habitual habit. And this can be small because when women are in perimenopause, the last thing they want to do is feel like, well, now I have something else I have to add to my list.
Yes.
Right? It's like, oh, I'm not going to do that. But we could even think about just breath work.
Mhm.
Taking 3 deep breaths in the morning and evening would be something that's super small that you can do while you're drinking green tea or maybe having a decaf coffee or something like that. So just some simple breath work and or more complex breath work if the listeners know that they have a system that they like but incorporating it more often. So that can be one way, easy way. Another easy way is to get out in nature, so get out in the created world. We know from science that it immediately changes our brain waves and it impacts our digestive system in a really positive way. So, creating a habit of trying to, even if you step outside and take some deep breaths, or you do a short nature walk. So, not like I'm going to power walk to get my exercise in today because I have to do that. Well, there's some days we can't do that. There's some days our body's telling us, you know what, I can't do hits, I can't hike a mountain or ride my bicycle. So, actually going out for a nature walk for the enjoyment of being in nature. This is something that's really hard to do because we're forcing ourselves to slow down, but we're building resilience by actually being able to do that. It changes our brain because we're in this dopamine society where we get dopamine hits from social media or news or whatever's happening. And so our brains don't even know how to function at that lower level. So we have to teach our brains again. That helps build resilience. Super easy thing that you can do.
It is.
Um, so there's a lot of different practices. For me, I really love to incorporate prayer, particularly meditative prayer when I wake up in the morning, followed by journaling. And even some days I'll journal a couple sentences and sometimes it's 5 pages. But that's a practice that works really great for me because I can do it in my PJs. I can, have a cup of tea or coffee or whatever, I want, and I don't have a big commitment to get dressed and get somewhere, get out the door, look like I'm put together because sometimes, I'm not. I feel like I need a minute. So, thinking about for the woman who's listening, what's a practice for you that can bring in more joy, greater purpose in our life, and build that resilience in a way that's personable to you, because that's what's really important. Not necessarily what's going to be exactly the same thing that works for me, but what is it in your life? One little thing, and that one little thing can make a huge change in the end of the day, the end of the week. So pick something, start it, and then keep track of how you feel at the end of that week. Try to do it for 21 days straight and see how you feel.
No, those are really good. We always recommend breath work and then walking outdoors. Oh, to the walking outdoors, I did want to add, like you brought up such an excellent point, and please don't use this as your power walking session because it's not what it's about. But we also want to like unplug and detox from the electrical side of the world. So we don't want to be listening to music. We do not want to listen to a damn podcast. Like just go outside and walk and be in nature. That way it can restore and replenish like it is supposed to.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, and I think it can, we run in fight or flight all the time, and just like I live where there's a lot of waterfalls, so I can walk this little tiny walk on a nature trail, and I can sit by this waterfall. I can feel my body just calming down. Go sit on a rock or something. Not everyone has access to a ton of open space, but just even being near a tree or a little stream or any of those things, right? Unplugged, as you say, because otherwise we kind of lose the benefit of it. But
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I wish we're in the desert, so it's not very relaxing like anywhere. But there are certain times and there are parks, and if that's not possible, I mean everyone has a backyard, and even that is better than not going outside at all.
that's true. Yes, you're probably pretty hot still down where you are.
Yeah, it's pretty warm. But the
Yeah.
waterfalls are so nice. I know like when we go out of town and there's even like a big lake will still create that water noise. And that is like one of the best things for reducing stress, the sound of water.
Yeah, definitely. It can be so calming and bring us back to center and
Right.
our greater purpose. I think that's the other thing when we think about resilience. Why are we choosing to make new choices to feel better? We need to anchor down into that greater purpose. Why? Otherwise, it's like, well, who cares? Now I'm at an age where I don't care. So why would I do that? I have the choice, but we really want to think about those choices are going to help us renew our health and have more energy and feel better. But why do we want to do that? So that's another big piece of resilience, finding that greater purpose and that greater why. And that can be, for my family, for my kids, for my future. I want to age well. There can be many, many reasons that, but finding that can help us also build resilience.
Right. What are your thoughts on running like a tiny gratitude journal daily?
Heck yeah. Gratitude is the one thing that can just bring our vibrational energy up so high in the moment because we're not thinking about what maybe we've lost or what we don't have. We're really focusing on the power of all the good things in our life and even saying all things are working for my greater good. And gratitude can help us get there. So I'm a huge fan of even just stating out loud three things, especially when you get in that negative kind of, maybe estrogen levels are up or you're out of balance and you get in that negative space, just voicing three things in that moment that you're grateful for can be really helpful. Or, like you said, starting, I had a friend give me quite a few years ago a 5 minute gratitude journal where it like prompts you. So, some of those are kind of nice where it prompts you for, your personal life, your work life, like all these different things. And so, you do have to think a little bit deeper. Oh, yeah, there's something here I am grateful for, but I didn't take time to think about that.
Right. Yes. And I think like with the hormone changes, it's so easy to get stuck in just a negative loop. Because I
Yeah.
mean, the challenges that come along with hormone changes are hard, and sometimes it seems overwhelming for sure, especially if you're not getting support, from your doctor or from a professional, and you know it's
Yeah.
hard. But finding something to be grateful for can start to shift the perspective a little bit.
Definitely. And it builds on itself. If you've ever done gratitude work where you keep track of how many days in a row you can keep up the practice, it's like a life changing. And I think for me, I always call it gratitude work because I have a negative bias. All humans do, and some more than others. It's natural, right? To keep us safe, right? But I think if you start building that and you can really see the life changes that happen when you build a gratitude journal and keep it up and try to do how many days can I do in a row? And it's super easy. I mean, I should say it's super simple, not always easy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's not always easy.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So I think those are some great tips that we've gotten covered so far. As far as like navigating through, through the changes of menopause, there are, not just the changes in our hormones, but it alters, we barely even touched on it. It alters how your brain functions. And there's that huge piece of mental changes and emotional changes. And with those, it's almost like your identity is changing. What is something, that would maybe help ease that mental transition for women?
Yeah, I mean, the hormones affect a lot of our neurotransmitters, cortisol levels, how we manage stress, and really when we think about it in a bigger level, our endocrine system is being disrupted. The communication between the main organs in our endocrine system, our hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid, ovaries, and adrenal glands, are really what's causing a lot of this emotional distress. And you can see those things touch every area of our body. And I think it's one of the areas that isn't well talked about for women because we think about hot flashes or physically being exhausted, and not being able to do those things. But the emotional piece is really can be really deep seated. So really going back to my three pillars of health is, focus on blood sugar regulation. So that's one thing when our blood sugar is spiking up and down, it can cause us to have a lot of emotional dysregulation. So, I always like to say protein up in the morning and carb down at night, complex carbs, right? So, reducing simple and refined sugars, particularly in the morning, but really we know sugar disrupts our endocrine system at a very high level. So anything that's going to impact that system is going to affect our neurotransmitters, our cortisol, and the things that are driving some of our emotions and that emotional instability. And I would say reducing caffeine. If you're using caffeine to have a lot to get energy because you can't get through your day, caffeine is also something that really triggers our brain, and it's almost like an illicit drug. And again, that brings our liver piece in. You have to detox caffeine through the liver, and some women don't do it as fast as others depending on our genetic makeup, right? Those detox pathways can a lot of times be determined by genetics. So those would be, a couple things that you could do right away. I would say for the emotional system regulation, so I like to call it emotional nutrition. If you have a high stress life and you're struggling to manage it, you feel resentful, you feel disconnected, you feel like there's no spark or joy or flatness in your life, look at your schedule and start to see what is serving me and what isn't. The amazing part about getting into perimenopause is we get to shed all the stuff, all the shoulds, all the things I'm supposed to do that we've been trained in our lives, in our culture to show up as women. But when we're in perimenopause, we can no longer serve at that level. So we have to really look at our schedule and say, what can we take out? What can we ask for help? Maybe you have a family and maybe you can ask a friend to help you with, pickup days for your kids, or maybe you can have a meal in, brought into the home once a week or something. So looking at that schedule to reduce those feelings of resentment and anger and frustration and just exhaustion in our life. And so that's one way to emotional nutrition. And it's a piece of stress management. So not just the tool of like tapping or breath work or, those things, but actually taking stuff away is the great part of being in period. You know what? I don't, all that stuff is, that's gone. I don't need to do that. And then thirdly, thinking about how, again, and I mentioned this several times because I do feel it's important, is that spiritual nutrition, anchoring down in a greater purpose. And I'll often ask women I work with, what brings you joy? What's one thing that you do that brings you joy? And I'll get this blank, I don't know. Because, we're not focused on ourselves. We don't even know, do we have hobbies that we like anymore? Are there things that you can go back to? So bringing something in, even I say a little bit each day, something small that brings us ultimate joy can really help balance out our emotions, and give us more purpose in life. So, like for me, I love plant care, gardening or buying a new plant or an orchid or something. But each person, I recently worked with someone who realized, I used to do a bunch of arts and crafts and hobbies, and I haven't done that in years. what's one little hobby you could pick up that's tiny that you can bring in that brings joy? And that's going to really help mental health.
Right. Yes. No. Oh my gosh. I think we could have a whole nother conversation, but it's almost like when we go through life, we lose who we are because we're so busy caring for our families and caring for others and taking care of work and taking care of social obligations. And you're 1000% right. I've even done it myself in the past. Like I had a business coach a long time ago, and he's like, "What do you like to do?" And I was like, I don't know. Like I take care of the kids and I work. Like that's what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you do, you lose yourself. But during this time, we're able to, almost like rediscover yourself. But the importance of setting those boundaries that you brought up, we have to set those because we have to care for ourselves. No one else is going to care for us. We have to do it. So finding ways to rediscover yourself, to find what brings you joy, to refine who you are, and cutting out the other noise. Like the world is not going to end, like you said, if you have dinner brought in once a week, or if you stop making everything in your home and get some simpler things to prepare. It's not, the world's not going to end, your family's not going to go into health decline, but it is going to help you have that space that you need.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think when you're speaking, it brings up that make your yeses and your no's. And it not only serves you, but it serves your family and community at a greater level because you're coming into the things you are saying yes to fully in them. As opposed to like, I guess I'll do that. And then you're not even, you can't even be fully present and because you feel like, I don't want to do this. Why did I sign up for this? Or whatever it might be. And I also like to talk about the positive part about going through perimenopause. I mentioned some of it being able to shed this, and you mentioned it too, rediscover yourself. But 50% of women find new careers when they start going through perimenopause in the menopause transition. They find deeper purpose in life.
Mhm.
And I think that's not well spoken about because we're in the place when we don't feel good. Something's wrong with me. I need to fix it. And it's like, this isn't a disease. Like this is a natural transition. How can we make it a powerful one and reclaim what's going on with our body? And that's the name of my podcast, Reclaim the Pause, because there's so much that we can bring into our lives and bring a lot more joy. Because I don't think we're
Mhm.
meant just to live in this survival, just from one thing to the next and in fight or flight. And it's like, what's the point? And so, really bringing in, having more joy each day and not just happenstance. We're only happy in certain circumstances, but actual true joy.
Right. No, that is so, so important. Um, well, Lindsay, we have taken up a lot of your time this afternoon. Was there anything else that you wanted to share that we didn't get a chance to cover this afternoon?
I mean, I think we covered a bunch of different topics in a lot of different ways. So I'm not really, I think a last message would be for your listeners who are going through this is, don't lose hope. You're not alone. You're not isolated. When I was started perimenopause, none of my peers were going through it. And I did feel that it was very isolating and alone, particularly dealing with that dark side of menopause, some of the depression or anxiety that can come up. Just know there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of tools, there's a lot that you can do, and you don't have to overhaul your whole life to do it. You can take small, simple steps that make dramatic changes in the way you feel.
Right. No, that's such an important point to bring up. Thank you. If
Yeah.
someone wanted, to find more of your content or possibly, consult with you for nutrition counseling or health coaching, where could they find you?
Yeah, so my website is Menopause with Lindsey, and you can, click on a free discovery call there. And then I have my socials. Instagram is Menopause with Lindsey. Facebook is Menopause with Lindsey Spivey because it somehow I got my things crossed up and it wouldn't let me do
Mm,
Menopause with Lindsey. But and on either of those places and or on my podcast, Reclaim the Pause. I offer a free guide on 3 ways to reclaim your energy in perimenopause. And it also comes with 3 bonuses. So there's 3 easy ways, and then there's 3 bonuses, including a full meal plan for menopause and a guided meditation. And so it really works under those areas that those 3 pillars that I talked about. And I want women to think about it. What are the consequences of low to no energy? And what does that impact in your life? And so this guide can be a first start with that. So if your listeners want a free gift, they can find that there.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
And thank you so much for your time today, Lindsey. I truly appreciate it. I think we've had a wonderful conversation. So thank you for joining me.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was really nice.
Absolutely.